Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie and today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in February. I read a total of 12 books. So my bookshelf behind me is looking a little bit bare because this is where I put all the books that I've read this year. So as we go through them, I'll put them back on the shelf and just tell you what I thought about them, what they're about, if I would recommend them. So let's get into it. So the first book, well, I'm not going to be going in order of the books that I read. I'm just kind of like going down my stack that I have here. So first book that we're going to talk about is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This one I loved. It's like a cozy fantasy. I love just pretty books like this. It's so beautiful. So we are following our main character, Keela, and she works at the library in the city, basically, and she has a talking spider plant that's kind of like her assistant. And so she's like guarding all these magical books, but magic can only be done by like the sorcerers of the land. It's actually illegal for anyone else to practice magic. So there ends up being like an uprising. The library actually starts to burn down. So her and her little spider plant assistant try to save as many books as they can, and they end up selling back to where that she lived whenever she was little because she knew that they had a house there. So they get there and they start to just meet the people there and stuff. She's very, very antisocial. She lives in the library, never talks to anyone outside the library. And so we see her open up this little like jam shop slash spell shop. Just such a cozy book. I love this. It's got like little flying cats in it. It's so fun. It's just a great read. If you're just wanting something kind of light, something interesting, I think this would be a great spring book just because we have all of the different berries and everything in this. So I would highly recommend it for the season. Then we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is the first book that I've ever read by Emily Henry, but I have bought more of her books since. I absolutely love this book. I loved the writing of it. I love the storyline of it. They both work in publishing. He is a literary agent and he is an editor, I believe. I think that's right. So she ends up pitching him a book. He does not like the book at all. And then she goes to this small town with her sister that's actually the location of a book, and they end up running into each other there. And so it's kind of like a like grumpy sunshine, like enemies to lovers type of book. I really like it. I love all of the different references to different tropes that are in this book because they both work in publishing. So I would highly recommend this one. And I think it would also be a good springtime book just because they're in like a small town. I feel like it'd be a good book for this season. I also read All Roads Lead Here by Marina Zapata. This one is a pretty chunky romance. This one is almost 600 pages. I read this in my attempting to read 200 pages a day video. So it didn't take me too long to get through this one since I was reading so many pages. I do like that we're kind of more following our main character, Aurora, and her story. She just went through a breakup. She's moving back to her hometown and just kind of like, forming friendships. And there's a little bit of kind of like found family in it, but we're seeing a lot more of her and just kind of like her finding herself after being in a relationship for 14 years. And so we definitely have the romance, but it's a very slow burn romance. We don't really see romance more towards the end of it. There is one spicy scene in it that you can easily skip over, but we're just seeing her going on hikes and she, gets a job. So I feel like we're seeing more of her story, which I really enjoyed more than we're kind of seeing the romance of it. So if you love a slow burn romance, but also kind of more of just like our main character finding herself, I would recommend this one. I read The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Cruel Prince series. I love The Cruel Prince. It was a 5-star for me. Also, really enjoyed this one. The ending of it was just like my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe how this book ended. And I did read the third book in the series in March, so you'll see my review of that in my next one. So in the first book, we're following Jude. Whenever she is 7, her parents are murdered, and then she goes to live in like the fairy realm. So then we kind of fast forward to where she's 17. She has a twin sister, and she's a little bit older of a sister, and so she is a human living in the fairy world. And so all the fairies just kind of like despise humans. She wants to fit in. She wants to be like a knight. So we follow her story, and then we're still following her in the second book. I love Jude, love her character. She is just like so strong and just like determined. And this one definitely, whenever it ended, I was like, I need to read the next book immediately. So I'd highly recommend this one. Also read Daughter of the Pirate King. This one is YA, so is The Wicked King. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but both YA. This one, I enjoyed this book. I feel like it was a little bit slow starting out, but we were following our main character, Alosa. So she is the daughter of the Pirate King. She goes on this mission to where she's going to get kidnapped by a different pirate crew. So they kind of like set it up to where the pirates think that they are actually kidnapping her, and she's going to find something while she's on their ship. So we're just following her, seeing kind of like a little bit of romance between one of the pirates, seeing her just being very like witty and just strong, and her just, not putting up with anyone's crap. So I like this. It has, like I said, a tiny bit of romance, but not too much. Young adult, not too hard of a read. And then there is a second book, The Daughter of the Siren Queen, which I have down here that I'll probably be trying to get to in March or April. We'll see. But this one was a good book. Also read Sourdough by Robin Sloan. This one, I didn't love this book, but we're following Lewis, and she works at like a computer place. They make like different like robot type of things, and she ends up just kind of ordering takeout from this restaurant all the time, and they make sourdough and soup. So whenever they move away, they kind of give her the sourdough starter. It's a very unique starter, kind of has like a little bit of like a magical element to the sourdough starter. So she starts making bread, and I feel like it was a good book, but just where she was in like programming and stuff, I felt like there was just a lot of stuff that kind of like I didn't understand too well. I don't know. I thought this was going to be like a very cozy read, but it wasn't that to me. I just was not a big fan of this book. But if you're someone who works in like computers, stuff like that, you probably will enjoy this one. But I thought as someone who likes to bake that I would enjoy this book, but it just didn't really love it. Also read Playing with Matches by Hannah Orenstein. This one I enjoyed. I think I reviewed this in another video that I did earlier in February. But so basically, we are following this girl. She is a matchmaker. She's in like a really long term relationship. It ends up ending, and then she falls for someone who she had matched with someone, and matches are completely off limits for the matchmakers, not allowed to date them at all. So she's breaking the rules, but kind of like hiding it from everyone. And so we're just kind of seeing her grow. She's making tons of mistakes throughout this book. I recommend it if you just want like a little easy, lighthearted kind of romance. Also read In 5 Years. This one is by Rebecca Surley. It is a very slow paced book. Like I felt like I thought I was going into more of like a very like romantic book, but it's not. It is a literary fiction. So we are following our main character, Danny. So she ends up falling asleep, and she wakes up, and it's her in 5 years. So we're seeing like what her life would look like with in 5 years. She's like with a person she doesn't know. She has like a wedding ring on her finger, and then she, ends up back in her regular life, and she's kind of trying to figure this out. She ends up meeting the guy that she's seen in 5 years, and we're just kind of seeing her. It ends up being a lot more about friendship than romance, so I'll go into that knowing that. The ending of it, I didn't really love the way that it ended, but I loved her friendship with her best friend. It was beautiful, a beautiful story for that. Definitely cried a little bit with this book, but I wouldn't go into it thinking you're getting romance. Definitely more about friendship and more of a slower paced book. Also read The Many Daughters of a Fong Moy by Jamie Ford. So this one, I thought I was gonna absolutely love it. It's a historical fiction. We're following different women that are come from a Fong Moy. So we're following Dorothy, who's our main character, and then she's kind of like connecting to the past generations of her family, and we see bits of their lives as well. So we have Faye Moy, a nurse in China serving with the Flying Tigers, Zoe Moy, a student in England at a famous school with no rules, and we have Lai King Moy, a girl quarantined in San Francisco during a plague epidemic, Greta Moy, a tech executive with a unique dating app, and a Fong Moy, the first Chinese woman to set foot in America. So Dorothy is trying to get over her past like generational trauma. It's just been passed down. So we're seeing all of these women. It is such like a sad book. There's just so many things that happen to those women that are just heartbreaking, and it's like none of them can catch a break, which I can understand because Dorothy's supposed to be getting over generational trauma. I just feel like that it could have been a little bit more uplifting in some parts. Like Dorothy's relationship with her husband is not good. Like they don't even really love each other. And like I feel like she could have had a loving husband and like had something going on good in her life that still made her want to get over her generational trauma. We end on a little bit of a better note because she does have a daughter, so she's wanting to like get past this trauma for her daughter. So we are set in the future with this book with Dorothy. Not a book that I recommend personally, but I know some people have absolutely loved this book, so that's just my opinion. And then my book of the month that I got for February was First Time Caller by BK Borison. This one I really enjoyed the banter in it. We kind of have like a little bit of a grumpy sunshine with this one. So we have our main character, Lucy. So her daughter calls into this radio station for love, and the person hosting it, his name is Aiden Valentine. And so he's kind of like doesn't believe in love anymore, but he's still hosting this radio show. So Lucy's daughter calls in and she's like, I'm trying to find love for my mom. And then Lucy grabs the phone and is like, who are you talking to my daughter this late at night? So Lucy ends up talking to Aiden some on the radio station. And then their little clip from the radio station goes viral, and the radio station wants to bring Lucy on air. So we're just kind of following them. I really like it. There is two kind of spicy scenes, but they're easy to skip over. So I would definitely recommend this book. And then I read My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren. This is actually the first book that I read in February. This one I really liked. It's a very easy one to read because we have a lot of like text messages. So we'll have like this. So this book did not take me very long to read at all, just because you do have a lot of that in there. So we're following our main character, Millie. She works at a university. She's kind of part of this like friend group, but it's all just like guys and her. And she kind of has a thing for one of them. So we're kind of seeing their friendship to lovers type of thing. So this one I enjoyed. Like I said, it's easy read, especially with all the text messages. It's a pretty funny book, and I liked the romance in it as well. So I would recommend this one. The last book that I have to talk about that I read in February is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I don't have the physical copy of it because I let someone borrow it, but it's a book that I really enjoyed. I'm not much of a thriller person, but this one, like, it's not too scary of like a thriller of something I felt like I could handle. But I ended up reading it in one day because I just needed to know what was happening. It was so captivating. I loved that book, and I can't wait to read the next books in the series by Holly Jackson. So we're following our main character, Pippa, and for her senior project, she decides that she's going to kind of investigate the murder of a girl that died whenever she was a senior, and her boyfriend murdered her, and then he ended up taking his own life. Except for Pippa doesn't think that's what happened. She thinks that someone else killed the girl and then framed the boyfriend. So she decides to start looking into it, and there's a lot of people who tell her that she shouldn't. It's a pretty, cut and dry case. But then she just starts getting like more and more into it, and then you start to learn some different things, and it's just a book I absolutely loved. I would highly recommend, and I just could not get enough of that book. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking around with me to learn about all the books that I read in February, and I hope that you'll subscribe so you see the books that I've read in March, because I've already read quite a few books so far this month, and I cannot wait to share them with you.